Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're embarking on a truly profound exploration. It touches on something really fundamental to all of us. Our inner strength, our character, and maybe how it impacts not just our own lives, our individual journeys, but maybe the entire world we share.
It's a big topic, but incredibly relevant.
It really is. And we've pulled together quite a fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive.
A real mix.
Yeah, wisdom from ancient Stoics like Epictetus, modern leadership thinkers, Simon Sinek, for instance,
Right.
iconic coaches, John Wooden, Vince Lombardi, always insightful.
Legends.
And even, the powerful, sometimes pretty provocative insights of Leo Tolstoy,
Definitely provocative.
Josh Waitzkin, Winston Churchill, and the legendary Marian Anderson. So it's quite a lineup, isn't it?
It really is a lot of different angles on this core idea.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to unpack how individual moral development, developing your character, isn't merely about self-improvement, something you do quietly for yourself.
Right, not just a private project.
No, it's about how it becomes a fundamental contribution, a contribution to the collective light, you could say, that we bring to the world.
That's a great way to put it, the collective light.
We're going to explore this through this powerful and I think deeply resonant metaphor of tending your inner flame. What exactly does that mean? And why does it matter so profoundly? Let's unpack this. So, okay. Start building our understanding of this inner flame. Let's lay a foundational whack. A really powerful thought from legendary basketball coach, John Wooden.
Ah, Wooden. Always so concise.
Exactly. He famously said, talent is God-given, be humble. Fame is man-given, be grateful. Conceit is self-given, be careful. It's such a concise statement, isn't it? But incredibly profound. It immediately sets the stage for what we're talking about today. But, what makes this distinction so crucial? Why start here?
That's precisely it. What's so insightful about Wooden's statement is how he immediately establishes a clear distinction. It's almost like an architectural blueprint for how we should see ourselves and what truly defines our worth.
Right.
He separates what we receive, our natural talents, those innate abilities that often feel effortless, almost like a gift we didn't earn.
Okay.
Then he distinguishes what's granted externally by others, things like fame, recognition, which, as we all know, can be incredibly fleeting, unreliable.
Yeah, it comes and goes.
Totally. And this is the key part. He lands on the most critical category, what we cultivate within ourselves. He uses the word conceit there, negatively.
Yeah, as a warning.
As a warning, exactly. But by extension, he's talking about the entire spectrum of our character, our values, our integrity, our resilience, our moral fiber, everything we build inside.
So why is that distinction so incredibly crucial for you, our listener, to grasp?
Because if you confuse talent, what you have, with character, what you are well, you risk anchoring your sense of self-worth to things that are fundamentally beyond your control.
Oh, okay. That's dangerous.
It is. Think about it. How many brilliant artists or, child prodigies or incredibly successful athletes have we seen just stumble? They stumble badly when their fame fades or their talent gets challenged by injury or maybe just younger competitors.
Happens all the time.
It does.
Yeah.
Because they relied on that external validation or those innate gifts.
Yeah.
They neglected the only true source of strength that's entirely within their control. Their character.
So Wooden's insight is actually empowering then.
Hugely empowering.
Yeah.
Because it tells you, look, while you might not have a say in your genetic makeup or how the world chooses to perceive you at any given moment, you maintain complete and total authority over the development of your character.
That's a big responsibility.
It is, but it's also liberating. It's the ultimate realm of personal agency. It's a direct challenge, really, to take responsibility for who you are becoming, regardless of the hand you've been dealt or the applause or lack of applause you receive. It's about owning your moral interior.
Owning your moral interior. I like that. It forces us to look inward, define ourselves by what we build, not just what we're given or what others project onto us.
Exactly.
So, okay. If character is this inner architecture, how do we actively tend to it? How do we make sure it stands strong? Building on that idea of cultivation, we then dive into this incredible metaphor from the Stoic philosopher Epictetus.
Ah, the Stoics. Always practical.
Right. As highlighted in the Daily Stoic, the goodness inside you is like a small flame and you are its keeper. This isn't just a pretty turn of phrase, is it?
Oh, not at all.
It feels like a profound call to action, something that resonates across millennia.
Absolutely. This image, this metaphor, it transforms what can feel like abstract moral philosophy into something so tangible, so actionable for you, our listener.
Yeah.
We'll forget lofty ideals for just a moment. Simply visualize a small living flame, like a real candle flame or a small campfire.
Okay, got it.
Just like that physical fire, your inner goodness, your innate capacity for justice, for deep compassion, for wisdom, for courage, it doesn't just sustain itself magically.
It's fuel.
Exactly. It requires very specific knowledge and, crucially, consistent mindful attention to burn brightly. Without deliberate tending, it will inevitably dwindle. It's not a passive state, it's an active process. You have to work at it.
So what kind of knowledge are we talking about here? Is it just reading philosophy?
Well, philosophical texts, spiritual scriptures, those can certainly help, provide guidance. But the knowledge is primarily self-awareness.
Knowing yourself.
Knowing yourself. Understanding your own triggers, recognizing your core values deep down, observing your emotional patterns, how you react instinctively, and discerning the difference between, say, a gut impulse and a considered intention.
And the mindful attention part.
That isn't one single grand act.
Yeah.
It's not like one heroic deed keeps the flame burning forever.
Right.
It's the daily discipline. The discipline of noticing your reactions to small frustrations, like someone cutting you off in traffic. Choosing a moment of pause, just a breath, over an immediate, maybe regretful impulse.
Like yelling back.
Exactly. And aligning even your most mundane decisions, the little things, with your larger principles. For instance, the fuel for this flame consists of your daily choices. Every single decision, no matter how seemingly insignificant it feels at the time, adds either kindling or dampness to that internal fire.
Give me an example.
Okay, how do you respond to moments of frustration during your commute? Or maybe the grocery store checkout? Do you choose honesty even when it might be inconvenient or maybe a little embarrassing? How do you treat those who might not be able to offer you anything tangible in return? The waiter? The delivery driver, a stranger asking for directions.
Those moments matter.
They matter immensely. These aren't just isolated incidents. They are direct inputs to your inner flame. Without this conscious fuel, without the deliberate act of tending, the flame will inevitably dwindle. It becomes a mere flicker, struggling to provide light even for yourself.
But the flip side.
But with proper, consistent, and intentional choices, choosing patience, choosing honesty, choosing kindness, it can illuminate not only your own path, helping you navigate life's complexities with clarity and purpose, but it can also provide a steady, reliable light for others. For people who are navigating their own challenges, maybe finding themselves in moments of darkness, your light helps them see.
It makes perfect sense. We're all familiar with how quickly a campfire can die if you don't feed it, right?
Exactly. Neglect it and it goes out.
But then this raises a really important question. It's about the boundaries of our responsibility.
Okay.
What does our role look like beyond our own flame? Especially when we see others struggling to maintain theirs, or maybe even actively choosing to dim their own light. Do we have a duty to try and reignite theirs? Or step in?
That's the really profound point Epictetus makes. And it's one that truly liberates us, I think, while also underscoring our profound individual duty.
How so? What does he say?
He says, every person has their own version of the flame and is responsible for it, just as you are.
Okay, individual responsibility.
Right. Then he adds, if they all fail, the world will be much darker. That is something you don't control.
You can't control the outcome for everyone else.
You can't. But here's the key. But so long as your flame flickers, there will be some light in the world.
Wow.
This perspective is so profoundly liberating because it frees you from that overwhelming and ultimately impossible burden of trying to control others' moral development or forcing them to act virtuously.
You can't make someone be good.
You can't light another's flame for them. They have to choose to tend their own. It's like trying to make someone else breathe for them. It doesn't work. Yet at the very same time, it highlights your profound and personal responsibility for your own moral development. Your choices today, right now, are not just internal. They are quite literally adding light to the collective illumination of the world.
So just by tending my own flame, I'm contributing.
You are a beacon simply by tending your own fire.
Yeah.
That's a powerful and freeing realization, both at the same time. Responsibility and freedom, hand in hand.
Okay, that sets the stage beautifully. Individual responsibility, tending your own flame. But here's where it gets really interesting and, well, maybe a bit provocative.
Uh-oh.
Because It challenges our conventional notions of justice, accountability, things many of us hold very dear.
Right, things society relies on.
Exactly. Leo Tolstoy introduces a fascinating tension to this understanding of personal responsibility, especially with his reflections on punishment.
Ah, Tolstoy and punishment. Yeah, that's definitely challenging.
He argues, and this is quite stark, every punishment is based not on logic or on the feeling of justice, but on the desire to wish evil on those who have done evil to you or to another person.
Oof. That hits hard.
It's a stark, almost uncomfortable assertion, isn't it? It kind of strips away a lot of our comfortable rationalizations about why we punish.
It absolutely does. This perspective forces us to critically examine our own, visceral reactions when others fail, when they fail to maintain their inner flames, when their actions dim the light around them, or worse, inflict darkness on others.
What's our first instinct?
Our instinctive response often involves some form of retribution, right? Or retaliation. It's very primal, almost that tit-for-tat reaction, an eye for an eye.
Yeah, make them pay.
Make them pay. Tolstoy suggests this impulse, this desire to inflict suffering in return, represents a very low animal feeling which should be suppressed.
A low animal feeling. Wow.
He's not saying we shouldn't react or that we shouldn't hold people accountable. That's a key point. But he's saying that we, as a species, are capable of more sophisticated, more compassionate, and ultimately maybe more effective responses than just lashing out.
We can do better than just vengeance.
He's essentially saying we're better than that. We have the capacity for a higher moral standard, one that moves beyond simple vengeance or just inflicting pain because pain was inflicted.
And you have to remember the context, right? Tolstoy's time.
Absolutely. To truly grasp how radical his stance was, imagine 19th century Europe. Penal systems were often incredibly brutal. Public executions, forced labor, debtors' prisons. A pervasive philosophy built on retribution and deterring crime through sheer suffering.
So he wasn't just tinkering around the edges.
No, he wasn't suggesting minor reforms. He was dismantling the very moral bedrock of society's approach to justice at the time. His broader philosophy, often rooted in his kind of Christian anarchist beliefs, saw the prevailing system as just a continuation of violence, fundamentally flawed because it mirrored the very evil it claimed to be punishing.
So what did he propose instead? If not punishment, then what?
Well, he proposes a truly radical idea for his time and honestly even for ours today. He claims every crime already has punishment in itself, and it is more cruel and more just than the punishment created by people.
Unpack that. The crime is the punishment. How?
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, the inner flame, consider the profound implications. If someone allows their inner flame to be extinguished or maybe to burn with negative energy, things like cruelty, dishonesty, greed, through their own poor choices, they experience natural internal consequences that are far more pervasive, far more inescapable than any external punishment a judge could hand down.
Like what are these internal consequences?
We're talking about things like deep isolation, even if they're surrounded by people. A constant gnawing internal conflict, the profound loss of self-respect, knowing you've betrayed your own values. And the tragic inability to form meaningful, authentic relationships because you can't be authentic yourself.
That sounds bleak.
It is. Imagine, say, that brilliant artist we mentioned earlier, the one who consistently betrays their integrity for fleeting fame. They might gain external recognition, applause, awards.
Right.
But internally, they're gnawed by the knowledge of their compromised art. They lose the joy in creation. They ultimately lose respect for their own gifts, their own flame. That internal discord, that inability to truly connect with their authentic self, that's the profound, inescapable punishment Tolstoy describes.
So it's not something a court needs to impose.
Exactly. These aren't things that need to be imposed by an external judge or jury. They emerge organically and inevitably from their actions. It's like a self-inflicted wound to the soul. The act itself creates the suffering.
So adding external punishment on top of that.
Tolstoy argues it's like putting more wood in the fire. It just creates more heat, more destruction, more suffering. It doesn't actually address the underlying problem, which is the diminished flame itself.
It just makes things worse.
It's a perpetuation of a destructive cycle that burns everyone involved, the offender, the victim, society. This doesn't mean abandoning accountability or justice. That's a common misinterpretation people have of Tolstoy.
Right, it's not saying let people run wild.
Not at all. Instead, it suggests a profound shift in our entire approach. It pushes us to consider moving from a purely punishment-based paradigm focused on retribution to one focused on deeper understanding, on true restoration, and ultimately on helping others to rekindle their own inner flames, if possible.
Healing the wound, not just punishing the symptom.
Exactly. Healing the wound, not simply punishing the one who inflicted it. Tolstoy even predicts, and this is staggering, everything about our present system of punishment and about all criminal law will be thought of by future generations in the same way that we think of cannibalism or human sacrifice to ancient pagan gods.
Wow, that's a bold prediction.
It's incredibly bold. He's not just challenging a legal system, he's challenging our very moral evolution as a society. He's urging us to consider that these practices, which we currently accept as normal, maybe even just, might one day be seen as primitive and barbaric. He's challenging us to evolve.
It really makes you pause and consider, doesn't it? How much are we truly addressing the root cause of wrongdoing versus simply reacting to the symptom with more pain?
That's the core question he forces us to confront.
What stands out to me, though, is how much it forces you to question your immediate gut reaction to wrongdoing. It's a real paradigm shift.
It is.
Because for many listeners, I imagine the idea of external punishment feels, well, necessary, like a deterrent, something that maintains societal order. How does Tolstoy's vision account for that? Or is he implying a completely different kind of social contract where those external deterrents just aren't needed? It almost seems idealistic, maybe naive, for our current world.
It's a very valid challenge, and you're right, it does sound idealistic, perhaps wildly so, from our current vantage point. Tolstoy wasn't advocating for, chaos or anarchy. He was advocating for a society built on radically different principles.
Like what?
On love, forgiveness, and the power of the internal moral compass, rather than relying on external coercion and fear of punishment. He genuinely believed that true societal order emerges not from the fear of the police or the courts, but from individuals cultivating their inner goodness, their inner flame.
So if enough people tend their flames,
then the need for external systems of retribution would naturally diminish, because the internal consequences, the guilt, the shame, the loss of self-respect, the social isolation that comes from untrustworthiness, would become the primary deterrent.
That internal reckoning we talked about.
Exactly. He saw it as a long game, certainly, an evolutionary leap for humanity, and he recognized that. But he believed the internal suffering caused by moral transgression is ultimately a far more powerful and pervasive deterrent than any prison cell or fine could ever be. He saw our current system as just perpetuating the very violence it sought to end, trapping us in a cycle.
And the cannibalism comparison.
His prediction about cannibalism emphasizes this leap. He believed that just as we look back at ancient practices that were once normal human sacrifice, for example, with horror and disbelief,
Right.
Future generations would look back at our current punitive systems, our prisons, maybe even our whole concept of retributive justice with similar disdain. Because they would have evolved beyond the need for them, having cultivated stronger inner flames collectively. It's a profound call to personal moral responsibility as the ultimate foundation for societal change. It starts with each of us.
That's a really intense challenge to our accepted norms, to think our current justice system might seem barbaric one day.
Okay, so if our inner flame is so precious, and if external punishment might not be the best answer when it falters in others, then how do we keep our own flame burning? Especially when life inevitably throws challenges our way. Because it will.
It absolutely will. No one escapes hardship.
Right. And this next section of our sources offers a powerful, almost counterintuitive truth about that. Josh Waitzkin, the chess prodigy, martial arts champion.
Yeah, knows a lot about pressure.
He advises, quite simply, respond to heartbreak with hard work.
Simple but hard.
And then Winston Churchill, a man who navigated some of humanity's darkest hours, famously said, "Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm."
Another incredibly potent line.
These aren't sentiments you'd immediately expect to hear side by side with, philosophical discussions of inner goodness and stoicism, but they fit perfectly, don't they? They absolutely do. What's profoundly insightful here, I think, is the idea that the very experiences that threaten to extinguish our flame, the setbacks, the pain, the failures, can actually become the most potent fuel.
Yeah.
Fuel that makes it burn brighter and hotter than before.
So adversity isn't just something to survive, it's potential fuel.
Exactly. Heartbreak, failure, deep disappointment. These are not just setbacks or obstacles to be avoided at all costs. In fact, they are profound tests of our character. They reveal the true strength, or maybe the weakness, of our inner light.
How so?
They show us whether we will crumble under pressure, let the darkness take over, or whether we will use that pressure to forge something stronger within ourselves. They reveal whether we will allow external circumstances to diminish our internal radiance, or whether we will actively choose to use these experiences to deepen our understanding of resilience,
Okay.
to cultivate greater compassion maybe for ourselves and others who suffer, and to forge a deeper, more robust wisdom, the kind of wisdom that can only be earned through struggle, not learned from a book.
So Waitskins respond to heartbreak with hard work. What's happening there?
When you respond to heartbreak, whether it's personal loss, professional failure, whatever, with hard work, as Waitskins suggests, you're not just distracting yourself or coping with pain, you are actively transforming it.
Transforming pain.
Yes. You're taking that raw, intense energy of suffering, that wound, and redirecting it into something constructive, something growth-oriented. It's like alchemy for the soul, turning lead into gold.
And Churchill's point about enthusiasm through failure.
When you maintain enthusiasm through repeated failures, and Churchill certainly knew failure, he had huge political defeats before his wartime leadership.
Right.
You're not being naive or unrealistic. You're developing that persistence, that unwavering resolve that truly separates temporary setbacks from permanent defeat. It's not about avoiding the fall. It's about how you choose to process and react when you hit the ground.
Do you stay down or get up?
Exactly. Do you let it crush your spirit, extinguish your flame? Or do you find the lesson, pick yourself up, maybe dust yourself off, and keep moving forward with renewed determination, maybe even more determination because of the failure? It reminds me, actually, of a personal challenge I faced years ago. A big project I'd poured my heart into completely fell apart at the last minute.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it felt devastating,
Yeah.
like a total, utter failure. For a moment, honestly, I just wanted to give up on that whole line of work.
Understandable.
But by forcing myself, really forcing myself, to analyze why it failed, what I could have done different, or what lessons were there, and then pouring that energy, that frustration even, into preparing meticulously for the next opportunity.
It actually sharpened my skills in a way that Simbilla's success never could have.
The heartbreak became a teacher.
It became a brutal but incredibly effective teacher. The failure became fuel.
That makes sense. And this principle, this idea of finding fuel in difficulty, it directly connects to something else in our sources, right, about training systems. Yes, a fascinating closing observation. When designing training systems, embrace each individual's funk. It's the best way we learn.
Embrace the funk. What does that mean in this context?
It's incredibly insightful. It means that your quirks, your imperfections, your unique challenges, even your past heartbreaks and failures, your personal funk, aren't just obstacles to be overcome or hidden away in shame.
They're not liabilities.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
They are, in fact, the raw materials you work with in developing yourself. They're the unique contours of your inner landscape that allow your flame to burn in its own distinct way, with its own unique color and intensity.
Give me an example of funk as fuel.
Okay, maybe your funk is an intense sensitivity, makes you prone to heartbreak. Maybe you get overwhelmed easily. But that same sensitivity might also make you capable of profound empathy, deep artistic expression, or incredible intuition.
So the weakness has a corresponding strength.
Often, yes. Or perhaps your funk is a restless curiosity that makes you easily distracted from routine tasks. That could be a problem. But it might also make you highly innovative, adaptable, able to see connections others miss. Your particular combination of strengths and weaknesses, your funk, creates a unique path for your character development that no one else can walk. It's a deeply personal journey shaped by embracing, not just fighting, your individual funk.
That's such a liberating thought, isn't it? That your funk is not just a hindrance, but potentially a pathway. It completely flips the script on what we often perceive as weaknesses we need to eliminate.
It really does.
But here's a tricky question then. How do we distinguish between productively embracing our unique character, our funk, and simply indulging in destructive habits? You know, those aspects of our funk that do genuinely dim the flame. Where's the line?
That's an excellent and crucial distinction to make, because embracing your funk is not a free pass for bad behavior or self-destruction.
Right.
The key, I think, lies in conscious awareness and intent. Embracing your funk isn't about excusing unhealthy patterns like chronic anger or addiction or dishonesty. It's about recognizing the root or the potential within that quirk, that tendency.
Okay, finding the root.
For example, let's take procrastination again. If your funk is procrastination, simply indulging it, putting everything off, clearly dims your flame. It leads to stress, missed opportunities, letting people down.
Definitely.
But if you dig deeper and recognize that maybe your procrastination stems from an underlying desire for perfection, or perhaps a fear of not meeting incredibly high standards.
The reason behind it.
Exactly. And then you work with that underlying drive, maybe by breaking tasks into smaller, less intimidating steps, or by focusing on progress over perfection. Then you're embracing the positive root, the desire for excellence, in a productive way. You're not fighting the funk itself, the perfectionism, but shaping its expression constructively.
So it's about channeling it.
It's about channeling it. It requires introspection, real honesty with yourself, and a willingness to ask, are my choices genuinely fueling my inner light, helping me grow?
Yeah.
Or are they draining it, keeping me stuck? It's about taking ownership and directing that unique energy purposefully.
That distinction really helps clarify the path forward. It's not just acceptance, it's conscious channeling. Okay, so we've talked about our individual flame, how we tend it, how adversity fuels it, even how our unique funk can be part of that fuel. But how does this responsibility extend beyond ourselves? How do we use our well-tended flame to affect the world around us, maybe to inspire others?
Right, moving from the individual to the collective again.
Exactly. And Simon Sinek's insight here is incredibly relevant. Leaders are not just the ones who do, they are the ones who say why, then they do it. This isn't just about business leadership, is it? It feels much broader.
Oh, absolutely. It applies to parenting, teaching, community organizing, friendships, any situation where influence is involved. If we connect this directly to the bigger picture of flame tending, a leader's primary responsibility isn't just about meticulously maintaining their own inner flame, though that's absolutely crucial. You can't light others if your own light is flickering out, right?
Lead by example.
Lead by example, definitely. But the true impact, Sinek suggests, comes from helping others understand the purpose behind their actions, the why. Sinek's famous start with why concept basically posits that people aren't deeply motivated by what you do or even how you do it nearly as much as why you do it.
The underlying reason.
That deep sense of purpose, of meaning connecting to that why, is essentially helping others to kindle and maintain their own flames. A true leader isn't just issuing directives, telling people what tasks to perform. They're explaining why it matters. They're providing the existential fuel for others' internal fires.
So leadership is about providing purpose.
Providing purpose, clarifying meaning, connecting actions to values. This form of leadership, it transcends mere authority or charisma or having a fancy title on a business card.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It involves becoming someone whose own inner flame burns brightly and consistently enough to provide illumination for others. A guiding light that helps them see their own path more clearly, maybe understand their own motivations better, and connect their individual work or effort to a larger meaning.
Like Martin Luther King Jr.
He's a perfect example. He didn't just tell people what to do, march here, boycott this. He articulated a profound why, a deeply moral vision of justice, equality, the beloved community, that ignited a movement. His conviction, his why, acted as a powerful collective beacon.
Right.
But crucially, Sinek's approach, and the whole idea of flame-tending leadership, also respects each person's individual responsibility for their own moral development. A true leader doesn't impose their light or demand conformity. They share it, creating an environment where others feel empowered to find and strengthen their own light, their own why.
So the leader explains why.
Because understanding purpose provides the most sustainable fuel. It keeps moral flames burning even through the most difficult, ambiguous, challenging circumstances. When you understand why you are enduring hardship or making a sacrifice, the obstacles become less daunting, and the effort becomes more meaningful. It transforms mere tasks into a mission.
That links powerfully to Marian Anderson, doesn't it? Her statement.
Incredibly powerfully. Consider Marian Anderson's declaration. I have a great belief in the future of my people and my country.
Remind us who she was.
Marian Anderson was a black contralto, one of the most celebrated classical singers of the 20th century. But her incredible talent existed alongside profound systemic racism and discrimination she faced constantly.
The Constitution Hall incident.
Exactly. She was famously denied the chance to perform at Washington, D.C.'s Constitution Hall by the Daughters of the American Revolution simply because she was black. This led to her historic open-air concert on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1939, arranged by Eleanor Roosevelt and others, drawing a massive integrated crowd.
An iconic moment.
Truly. So when Anderson says she has great belief in the future, given everything she endured, this isn't just mere optimism or wishful thinking. It's a profound recognition that collective progress depends fundamentally on individuals maintaining their personal commitment to excellence, to virtue, to their own inner flame, even in the face of profound injustice.
Her belief was fuel.
It was absolutely fuel. Her belief in the future wasn't just a personal feeling. It represented a tangible form of fuel that kept her own flame burning fiercely. It gave her immense strength and perseverance throughout her life and career. And in doing so, her flame, her conviction, simultaneously inspired countless others, black and white, to tend their own flames with similar dedication and hope.
She embodied the why.
She embodied the why. It shows us that deep personal conviction, that brightly tended inner flame, can ignite and spark a collective light. It can move mountains. It provides a shared why that can galvanize an entire people.
Her conviction truly acted as that collective beacon, a living example of Senec's why. It wasn't just about what she sang, though her voice was magnificent, but why she sang and what her very existence and perseverance represented in that context.
Beautifully put.
Okay, building on all of this, the individual flame, its fuel from adversity and purpose, how it extends to leadership. How do we then approach the idea of improvement, of striving? Because let's be honest, tending our flame isn't always going to feel successful. Our flame might flicker, we might stumble, we will stumble inevitably.
We're human. Falling short is part of the process.
Right. And Vince Lombardi, another iconic coach, this time from football, renowned for his relentless pursuit of excellence, offers crucial guidance here. He said, "Perfection does not exist, but if we search for it, we just might find excellence."
Another gem. So practical.
This feels so important for anyone trying to grow, especially when faced with the inherent messiness of character development. How does this apply to tending the inner flame?
It's a brilliant segue, actually, because Lombardi's wisdom acts as a vital, practical safeguard for our inner flame. It protects it from burning out.
How so?
Well, this raises an important question when we apply his insight to our moral development. How does Lombardi's focus on excellence guide us? If you pursue moral perfection, interpreting that as achieving some flawless, unblemished state of virtue where you never make a mistake, never have a negative thought, never fall short, that pursuit would be utterly futile and profoundly discouraging. We would inevitably fail constantly. We'd likely burn out completely, trying to be flawlessly virtuous in every single moment, making zero mistakes.
That sounds exhausting and impossible.
It is. That kind of unrealistic absolute expectation can actually extinguish the very flame we're trying to nurture. It leads to self-condemnation, despair, maybe even giving up altogether. I can't be perfect, so why bother?
Right.
However, the sincere pursuit of perfection, that continuous, unwavering effort to improve our character, to refine our responses, to elevate our choices, even and especially when we stumble, that naturally leads us towards excellence.
It's the striving, not the arriving.
Exactly. It's in the striving, the consistent effort, not the impossible arrival of perfection, that we find growth and sustain the flame. Lombardi understood this perfectly in football. True mastery, true excellence, isn't about never making a mistake or never losing a game. It's about consistently learning from mistakes, pushing your limits relentlessly, and showing up every day with unwavering effort and discipline.
He demanded effort, not flawlessness.
Precisely. His teams weren't literally perfect. They made mistakes.
Yeah.
But they consistently strived for that ideal of perfect execution, and that pursuit brought them unparalleled excellence and success.
So this principle, applying it to our inner flame,
it's absolutely vital. It prevents the inner flame from being extinguished by the crushing weight of unrealistic expectations of flawless virtue. Instead, it encourages consistent, day-by-day growth and improvement. Small steps consistently taken.
Okay.
Each new day presents fresh opportunities. An opportunity to respond maybe just a little more wisely to that challenging situation in traffic instead of succumbing to anger. An opportunity to act a bit more compassionately towards that difficult person in your life. Or to choose courageously, even in a small way, when faced with fear or an ethical dilemma.
The flame doesn't have to be perfect.
No, the flame doesn't need to burn perfectly, like some idealized, unwavering beacon to provide light. That's an impossible ideal for any human being. What it needs is to burn consistently, with genuine intent, even if it flickers sometimes, even if it dims momentarily. It's about the deliberate effort, the sustained commitment to progress, not about reaching some static, unachievable ideal state.
That protects the flame.
Yes, this mindset protects your flame from self-inflicted despair and encourages continuous humble growth. It's about getting back up after you fall, learning the lesson, and recommitting to the pursuit every single time. That's where the real strength lies.
That's such a crucial distinction, isn't it? Consistency over the impossible ideal of perfection. It really shifts the pressure, making moral growth feel more attainable, less like a constant battle against an impossible standard you can never meet.
Exactly. More like a practice, less like a final exam you keep failing.
Right. Okay, so we've explored the architecture of character, Wooden's distinctions. We've looked at the flame metaphor from Epictetus. We wrestled with Tolstoy's challenging paradox of punishment. We saw how adversity fuels growth, Waitskin and Churchill, and how leadership involves tending others' flames by sharing the why, like Sinek and Anderson showed us, all while pursuing excellence, not perfection, as Lombardi advised.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But as we always say, knowing isn't doing right. Understanding these principles intellectually provides, frankly, little benefit without practical application.
True change comes from action.
So let's get tangible. Let's bring it right down to earth. What does this all mean for you, for us, in our daily lives? How might you actually implement this idea of flame tending day in, day out?
It truly begins with intentionality. And you're right, it's less about grand, heroic gestures and much more about consistent micro-decisions woven into the fabric of your day.
Okay, like what?
Well, maybe begin each day by consciously asking yourself, what fuel does my inner flame need today? Just taking a moment to pose that question.
What might that look like?
It isn't necessarily about monumental acts. It might involve something as simple and yet profound as spending just 5 minutes reading a passage from wisdom literature, Stoic, Buddhist, religious texts, poetry, whatever resonates with you. Or consciously practicing gratitude for the small, often overlooked things in your life. The warmth of the sun, a good cup of coffee, a kind word from someone, or engaging in meaningful work, finding the part of your job, even if it's small, that aligns with your deeper values. Or simply making conscious choices throughout your day that are aligned with what you know, deep down, to be good and true.
Small choices.
Tiny choices. Choosing to listen fully in a conversation rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. Opting for patience instead of snapping in a slow queue at the store. It's about being deliberate with your moral energy, not just letting life happen to you and reacting passively.
And when difficult situations inevitably arise.
Which they will.
Yeah.
Remember Tolstoy's wisdom about punishment, that the desire to wish evil on others or to retaliate in kind only adds more fuel to the destructive fire. It doesn't solve the underlying problem. And remember Churchill's insight about maintaining enthusiasm, or at least persistence, through failure. So instead of allowing frustration, disappointment, or even anger to diminish your flame, to make you cynical or despairing, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, how can this experience, counterintuitively, become fuel for growth?
Find the lesson, find the fuel.
Exactly. If you face a professional setback, instead of just despairing or blaming, ask, what specific skill can I sharpen because of this? What new knowledge can I acquire? How can this make me stronger or wiser for next time?
And when other people disappoint us or act badly.
That's often the hardest part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Resist that primal impulse to punish them, to lash out, to seek revenge, even in small ways like gossip or holding a grudge. In daily life, this could mean choosing to respond calmly to a rude driver instead of engaging in aggressive driving yourself. Or finding a sliver of compassion, or at least understanding, for a difficult colleague instead of just harboring resentment and negativity.
It's hard, though.
It is incredibly hard sometimes. But instead of immediately lashing out, consider how you might respond in a way that, even subtly, could help them to maybe see a different path, to rekindle their own inner light. Perhaps that means setting firm but empathetic boundaries. Or maybe it just means holding space for their own difficult journey without adding your judgment to their burden. The question becomes, how can I contribute light here instead of adding to the darkness?
That's a powerful reframe.
And finally, pay deep attention to the why behind your actions, as Simon Sinek so eloquently suggests. Understanding your deeper purposes, the underlying values that truly drive you, whether it's contributing to your community, creating something beautiful, learning something new, or simply caring for your family.
Knowing your motivation.
Knowing your core motivation provides incredibly sustainable fuel for your flame, especially during those challenging periods when the easy path, the path of least resistance, might seem much more appealing.
How do you find that why in the everyday grind?
It's often found in reflection, taking moments to consider what genuinely motivates me beyond just a paycheck or external reward, what gives me a sense of meaning, what makes me feel alive and purposeful, and then, when it feels appropriate, share these purposes with others.
Share your why.
Yeah, not as preaching or lecturing, definitely not, but as illumination. Sharing your own struggles and motivations authentically might help them understand their own path their own motivations, and ultimately maybe discover the fuel for their own internal fires. What's so powerful here really is that these aren't isolated, overwhelming tasks you have to add to your to-do list.
Right.
They are small, consistent efforts woven into the fabric of your daily existence, like threads in a tapestry. They accumulate over time to build a radiant inner flame that burns ever more brightly.
It's all about those micro decisions and that consistent effort, isn't it? It makes the whole idea of moral development feel incredibly accessible, not like some monumental, unreachable goal.
Exactly. Anyone can start right now with the next small choice.
But are these habits always easy to cultivate? Or, maybe more importantly, easy to sustain when motivation inevitably wanes? Because it does wane. We all have days where we just don't feel like making the effort.
That's a completely fair question. And the honest answer is no. They're absolutely not always easy. Far from it sometimes.
Right.
Just like a physical flame needs constant feeding and protection from the wind, your inner flame will encounter headwinds. Serious headwinds sometimes. Cynicism, exhaustion, external pressures from work or family, maybe even just plain apathy, that feeling of, why bother?
So what do you do then, when the motivation just isn't there?
The key, I believe, to sustaining these practices when motivation wanes is to rely on discipline rather than waiting for fleeting inspiration to strike.
Discipline over motivation.
Think of it like building any other important habit, like exercise or healthy eating. You might not always feel like going for that walk or choosing the salad or reading that wisdom passage or holding your tongue when you're angry, but you do it because it's a commitment. You've made a commitment to tending your flame. It becomes part of your routine, your practice.
The consistency builds momentum.
Over time, that consistency builds its own momentum. The habit itself starts to carry you. Also, acknowledging those moments of dwindling motivation is crucial. That's part of the self-awareness we talked about earlier. Instead of criticizing yourself harshly for feeling unmotivated, oh, I'm such a bad person for not wanting to be patient right now, simply notice it.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the feeling without judgment. Okay, I'm feeling really drained and uninspired today.
And then?
And then choose one tiny, almost laughably small step to just gently rekindle it. Maybe it's just taking 3 deep breaths before responding to that annoying email. Maybe it's saying one thing you're grateful for. Just a flicker can be enough to get started again. Remember, Lombardi, the goal isn't to be perfect, especially on tough days.
Right, consistency, not perfection.
The goal is to be consistent in the pursuit of excellence, consistent in the practice of tending. Just keep showing up, even imperfectly. Hashtag the collective impact of individual responsibility.
That's such a powerful reminder. Discipline over inspiration when motivation fades, and consistency over perfection always. Okay, so after exploring all these profound ideas and practical applications, let's zoom out one last time. What does this all mean for us as individuals, yes, but also for us as a collective, as societies, as communities, as a species?
Right, the ripple effect.
The profound truth that seems embedded in this entire collection of wisdom, from Wooden to Tolstoy to Anderson, is that individual moral development and collective progress are utterly inseparable. You can't really have one without the other. They are 2 sides of the same coin, constantly influencing each other in ways we might not always immediately see or appreciate.
Exactly. Every single person who consciously maintains and tends their inner flame, who makes those small, consistent choices towards goodness, contributes directly and unequivocally to the total light available in the world.
Like adding lamps to a city grid.
That's a perfect analogy. Think of it like a vast, interconnected network of individual lamps in a sprawling city at night. If even one person abandons personal responsibility for their character development, if they let their lamp go out, maybe through neglect or cynicism or despair, they don't merely harm themselves, limiting their own vision and warmth. They reduce the overall illumination available to everyone around them. It's not just a private feeling. It's a reduction of the collective moral energy, the collective warmth, the shared light that makes the world a brighter, more humane, more navigable place for everyone.
So my choices have an impact beyond me.
Your daily choices, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant they feel in the moment, have a ripple effect that extends far beyond your immediate perception. You might not see it, but it's there.
Can you give an example of that ripple?
Sure. The patience you show when you're stuck in frustrating traffic, choosing a calm breath over laying on the horn or aggressive driving. That small act might prevent an escalation, might subtly influence the driver behind you, might just make the shared road a tiny bit less stressful for everyone.
Okay.
The honesty you maintain in small, seemingly inconsequential matters, like admitting a minor mistake at work instead of trying to cover it up, or not taking credit for an idea that wasn't truly yours. That builds trust, it sets a standard, it contributes to a culture of integrity. The compassion you extend to difficult people, even when it feels incredibly challenging and maybe you feel they don't deserve it, these aren't merely private virtues that live only within the confines of your own heart or mind.
They're public acts.
In a way, yes. What's so compelling here is that they are tangible additions to the collective light. They contribute to a moral atmosphere, a shared understanding of how we treat each other, a baseline of decency. That atmosphere helps others navigate their own challenges, it provides comfort, it models a different way of being, and perhaps it even inspires them to act similarly when they face their own tests.
So tending my flame is like a public service.
It's an act of public service, though often quiet and unrecognized as such. Your choice to keep your flame burning, to choose kindness or patience or integrity in a small moment, makes the path a little clearer, a little warmer, for someone else, even if you never know who they are or how your action affected them.
And connecting this back to Tolstoy's vision.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture of Tolstoy's radical vision for humanity, his belief that we will eventually evolve beyond punishment-based justice, that evolution becomes far more achievable, far more likely, when we understand that it depends fundamentally on individuals choosing to maintain their inner flames. It relies on enough people proactively nurturing their own goodness, their own capacity for empathy and responsibility, rather than allowing their moral light to be extinguished by resentment or fear or the desire for retribution or just plain despair.
So individual virtue enables societal evolution.
That's the core idea. The future he envisions, where our current forms of punishment seem as barbaric to future generations as cannibalism or human sacrifice do to us today, that future requires a critical mass of people committed to personal virtue. It requires enough individuals cultivating their inner light that different, more compassionate, more restorative, and ultimately more effective approaches to justice become not just theoretically possible, but practically inevitable, because the culture will have shifted.
It's not just a philosophical concept, then.
No, it's a direct call to action for each of us. Contribute to that brighter future by tending your own light, starting today in this moment. It's a profound responsibility, yes, but it's also an immense privilege to be part of that potential unfolding. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. This deep dive, it really reveals that moral development isn't some destination you finally arrive at, check off the list. It's a daily practice, isn't it? An ongoing commitment, moment by moment.
Absolutely. A lifelong tending.
Your inner flame, it requires constant attention, not because it's inherently weak or fragile, but precisely because it is so precious, so vital, so deeply powerful. The light it provides serves not only your own journey, guiding you through life's inevitable complexities and challenges, but it also illuminates the path for others, for people who might be struggling with their own moral development, perhaps feeling lost in the dark, looking for a sign.
This responsibility, it's simultaneously individual and collective, isn't it? It's deeply personal. Only you can tend your flame, but its impact is universal. You cannot control whether others maintain their flames. You can't force them to choose light, whether they choose to light their own way or succumb to darkness and self-diminishment. That's their journey, their responsibility. But you absolutely can ensure that your own continues to burn brightly and consistently. And in doing so, you contribute meaningfully, tangibly, to the total light available in the world. You actively participate in humanity's gradual, sometimes slow, but hopefully undeniable movement toward greater wisdom and compassion. It's your part in the grand ongoing story of human progress.
So ultimately, this whole flame metaphor, it teaches us that virtue isn't about achieving perfection.
No.
It's about consistency. It's not about controlling others or dictating their paths.
Definitely not.
But about taking profound, unwavering responsibility for ourselves, for our own choices, our own reactions, our own inner state. And it's not about achieving some final static state of goodness, as if you can just tick a box and say, okay, I'm good now.
Doesn't work that way.
Rather, it's about committing to the daily, sometimes humble, sometimes challenging, but deeply fulfilling practice of tending the light within us. Knowing, trusting that every flicker matters. Every small act of tending counts.
Every flicker contributes.
So as you go about your day-to-day, maybe consider this. What specific daily habit, no matter how small it seems, maybe a moment of intentional gratitude before you get out of bed. Maybe one unexpected act of kindness for a stranger or colleague. Perhaps a conscious choice of integrity in a difficult moment at work. Or perhaps simply pausing to take one deep breath before reacting when you feel triggered. What small habit could you cultivate or strengthen starting today to add just a flicker to your own inner flame? knowing that even that tiny spark contributes to the world's collective light.
A beautiful question to end on.
That's our deep dive for today.